All right, now moving on here on the growl. I recommend to everybody that you just stop listening right now. Now, you don't normally do that, but I want you to go to the Athletic Football Podcast and listen to the latest one on receivers and pass catchers, because what Nate and Dane and Robert did in breaking down that conversation, exhaustive is not even the right word. I mean, it was really getting into this. And for Bengals fans that want to know about all of these, day two guys, there's so many of them. It was such a great deep dive into it. I want to make sure you go and listen to that and take time. But I had more questions after that, believe it or not. And that's why I brought Nate Tice to join here. Nate, what's up, buddy?
How you doing? Yeah, this is the receiver pod or the pass catcher pod, because there is one guy we had to include
Yes.
there. No, going in, we had to do it was a lot different than last year, which was a weaker receiver class. This one, Robert and I actually had to come up with categories. Robert does that just to limit me. It's just to go like it's just to keep me on schedule, keep me within the rails, keep us under the time. So, but it's a compliment to this year's class with that position and a couple other positions that it's so deep. There's so many interesting guys that it took an hour and a half to talk about all of them, because that's kind of how this class is.
Yeah, there's so many different options, and we've kind of talked through a lot about what the Bengals are looking for. They're obviously unique because they have Burrow and he's unique, and they have Chase, and this year they have Higgins, and they're looking for the next Boyd, but maybe a future Higgins. And there's a lot of different kind of pieces that they're a unique situation because of where they're at. I'm not going to start with the receivers. I want to start with where you guys spent a lot of time, and that was with the Brock Bowers conversation, because it's also unique to the Bengals in that they have taken on the 1 year veteran value and churned out production over and over and over again, unbelievably, whether you're talking about even CJ Uzama, Hayden Hurst, Tanner Hudson, like they just do this. Tell me about Bowers and how he could be. I think we all know that he's fun and he's very good, and like that's not debatable. But how he could be an evolutionary thing for the Bengals and taking them to a different way of how they can operate schematically and offensively if they took him.
Yeah, Zach Taylor, and really probably because of what Joe Burrow prefers too, is there's a lot of 11 personnel, a lot of three receiver looks. It's why not? Those are our guys. We have Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd is one of the best slot receivers in the game. So let's get them on the field as much as possible. What Brock Bowers is, like you mentioned, Boyd moving on, T. Higgins, his whole situation. Bowers, to me, even if he has the tight end label, he really is more like a power slot receiver, a receiver, a pass catcher that can align where Tyler Boyd would traditionally align, because he is such a good athlete, such an explosive athlete, such a good pass catcher. He can get open and beat safeties. He can beat slot corners. He can beat linebackers easily. He's that type of mismatch. And Zach Taylor and this offense being so much 11 personnel, McVay, where he comes from with Sean McVay, he has other influences, but most recently with Sean McVay and the Shanahan guys, their preferred offense is 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. And that's because makes the defense dictate what they're trying to stop, and then you can go off of that. Robert always likes to use the term hold the pen last, in which I agree with what that's what 12 personnel can do if you use it right. What Bowers does is the Bengals hypothetically could stay in 12 personnel or stay in 11 personnel and always have their best 5 out there and always have different looks depending on what the defense wants to throw at them. They're giving themselves more paths, more options, potential options to have answers or to just create mismatches. Like a Bowers Chase 2-man game would be just phenomenal. Like just because they're almost similarly built, even if one's a tight end
Yeah.
version, he's 40 pounds heavier, but they kind of are, and they kind of have that explosiveness where they bounce off of guys. I know you wrote about it, but like that's what Bowers has, that same kind of strength to his game. I even said he's almost graceful in a way where it's like he catches in, bounces off a guy, never loses his foot. He's bending like just doing all these amazing things. Bowers to me he's his own thing. I've used the term offensive weapon, which I know gets thrown around, but for him, it actually applies because he can align anywhere. That would unlock a new element of this offense that wouldn't be foreign to Zach Taylor. And I think it would just unlock these are our new best pass catchers. And it gives you a better option, a great high-end number 2, potentially a different type of flavor than T. Higgins, but someone that complement Chase's game well because of all the 2 things that those 2 could do.
Could he be redundant with Gesicki in some ways? I mean, I know we're talking 1 year, so you
Yeah.
don't want to draft for 1 year, but when you're talking about a team that's kind of in right now with the way that they're treating the Higgins situation, going for it, is there a redundancy to what Gesicki is? I'm
Yeah.
sure Bowers gives you more as a
Yeah.
blocker, but that's not really why he's here.
No, he's the get first downs and catch touchdowns.
Yeah,
But yeah, but that's a good point though. Is Bowers, he's not a great blocker. He's not going to be Kittle, but he's not bad. Like he's not
yeah,
Gesicki's a net negative. Like he is a negative every time he has to block. I've never seen him win a block. I just haven't. Like it's not his game. He truly is a receiver.
yeah.
Bowers can scrap and do some of the dirty work stuff. The thing is like did they give Hudson or Sample a 3-year deal? They gave one of them kind of like a cheap
Sample 3 and Hudson just back. Yep.
and I liked both of those guys kind of like as far as like what they had to play last year. And those guys are compliments to Bowers. Those two would have a better skill set. So I agree with you that there is some redundancy, but that's also one of those things where it's like, all right, well, sorry, Gesicki, we're not prioritizing you anyways. All right, Bowers is taking your reps, and the other guys are come on because they can block. So those other two guys would I actually think have complementary skill sets, but not Gesicki. But I think he's a rental anyways. So
Correct.
that's
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it's not like they spent. I mean, you spent 2.5 million
yeah.
on Gesicki. It's throwaway if you feel like that.
If he gets squeezed out in camp and you're like, there's not a role. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I think the conversation that comes a lot of times with Bowers is, look, I mean, we know this list of the last 10 years and tight ends, right? You're using weapon, but I'll use tight ends taken in the first round. What makes him different from that list? What makes him different from, OJ Howard and TJ Hawkinson and Pitts and Ingram and Ebron and Fant, where it's just taken a while and the league has just really struggled here with finding it, with translating.
Oh, I know. Well, so Pitts and Bowers, even if they're both have high pedigree, coming into this league, they win different ways. Pitts is a ball winner, almost built like an outside receiver, built like a Higgins. He wins kind of that same way, or was projected to win that kind of way. While Bowers is a yak king. He averaged more yards after catch per reception than Malik Neighbors, more than Marvin Harrison, more than any receiver. Over 8 yards after catch. He's used on screens, like outside screens. They run receiver screens for Brock Bowers, and he's good at them because he's so good with that ball in his hands. That's where differences are. Hawkinson was more of a receiving tight end that can grow into an inline guy. He's more of a seam bender type. He attacks the intermediate areas, best on flats and thing. Noah Fant was more of an idea. A lot of these tight ends, not a lot of college tight ends have production. And usually the ones that do are glorified receivers anyway. They're 6'1", 220. They're like these weird types of guys. Bowers has enough size and the production's already there starting day one. Starting as a freshman for a national championship team, he was the number one guy. So there's not as much projection needed with him, but there's still ceiling with him. There's still a high ceiling with him. So I think that's why he's a little different flavor than high-end tight ends. One guy that's kind of come to mind to me was Kellen Winslow II. When he got drafted by the Browns in the top 10 years and years ago. That's his skill set's more like that than any of these other highly drafted guys. And Eric Ebron, whatever failure tight end you want to throw in here. He's so much more different than those types of guys.
Yeah. We've talked a lot here about some of the guys that make the most sense. We're talking about the Bengals at 49 and these, Ricky Pearsall, Lad McConkey, who probably won't make it there, but he's certainly like the ideal fit what they'd be looking for right now. I mean, he's like, 1A if they could find a way to make that happen. And some of these other guys, I wanted to ask you, who do you look at that class of, obviously beyond the top and see as a nice fit with Burrow, just because he's unique in the way that he plays and once he builds trust with the guy, man, he could just make that guy sing. Where do you see guys here and say, man, I could see that as a real Burrow compliment?
It's if we're just going with a guy that maybe could replace Boyd this year and then potentially replace Higgins on the outside. So like guys for me that I like with the Bengals are ones that I think could play inside and outside. Yep. Which is also because where Jamar Chase's game is going, how much they're starting to move him around. So you don't want a guy that's maybe slot only, which then it's like, well, we can't kick him outside, yada, yada. He has the limitations there. So then you're kind of narrowing your field. So that's why Ricky Pearsall, it's like, yes, he would replace Boyd, but he never plays on the outside. So now if Higgins leaves, okay, now we're back to square one because we need that outside guy. The guy that comes up to me, his upside is not a Higgins, and I'll just say straight up, but his upside to me is a very good number 2 is Jalen Polk from Washington,
Mhm.
who is this is exactly where I think his kind of slot would be in this class. No pun intended. But it's like I really see him as I have him graded higher as an early second rounder. I think he'll go more mid late second round, maybe even early third. But to me, he is a Z. He can play inside, he can play outside. Roman Dunze is the top receiver from Washington, but Polk to me is like a Diet Coke version of him. Does
Mhm.
just everything well, nothing great. Not a great athlete, more of an adequate athlete, but decent with the ball in his hands, can get some simple yards, can play from the slot, can play outside, can do dirty work. He's a better blocker than Tyler Boyd. I'll just even say right away, he's just bigger. It's just
Mhm.
physics. It's how it goes. But that's where I think he's an interesting guy. He's a good zone beater. The Bengals face a ton of zone these days. He's smart. He's a big body. He's got good hands. He's strong. Where they're picking, if they're looking at receiver there, that is like a great situation as skill set, value, all those types of things you want. So he's one to me that is a good fit if they want to replace both skill sets potentially.
Mhm.
McConkey's the same way. I think he's been, I'll be honest, because he's a white guy, is that he's been pigeonholed as slot only. He wins from the outside. He would be ideal too, but he's gonna be gone.
Yeah.
Everyone loves him.
Yeah.
Everybody is like exactly the same with him. Everybody I've talked to has him between like guy 28 and guy 35 on their big boards. And everyone's like, yeah, I would maybe see him sneaking into the late first. Everyone loves Lad because he's just going to be a good pro. You could just see it. He would be ideal. Like that's the
Yep.
prize to me in this range, but I think Polk is a nice consolation prize.
What one other person that I specifically want to ask you about is Malachi Corley because he's unique, is he Debo Samuel, right? Everybody wants to make that comp because Yak King and the size is like almost identical and second
I thought
round
Cincinnati was
potential.
trying not to be Kentucky. I thought they were
Exactly. So I don't know if necessarily if he would be it, but I'm just curious what you make of him because I mean they've certainly looked into him. He's really interesting.
Yes.
If can he learn to play inside, intermediate, and do all that stuff that you have to be able to do and not and take that next step from Western Kentucky to the NFL? I mean, or is that really a longer range projection?
It's you really have to bet that a lot has to hit, I think, to get more out of him. There's been comparisons to him, and I think in Dane and I talked about this with him was to Rashee Rice, maybe a little
Mhm.
smaller package of Rashee Rice because of all the yak stuff, all the crossers, all the stuff that they did for him to get the ball in his hands. Dane calls them runway routes, which I like. Give him a runway, get the ball in his hands, let him go. And Corley to me though is that I think college coaches, especially one like Western Kentucky, who chuck the rock all the time, they would find ways to use him differently if they could. They have that in their repertoire to use all that. And I watch him. But why I'm saying that is that makes me a little concerned could he be more? Because I feel like they would show it a little bit more. The thing is, what he is good at, getting the ball in his hands, creating yard, he is good at it. Like he's in between a gadget guy for me and a number 2, number 3 type for me that can grow from more. He's kind of like in between.
Mhm.
I popped him in the 3rd round. That's kind of where I feel safe with him because I just do have some concerns about what else you can tap into. But the thing is, his package of traits, what he is good at, is good. It's just also the Bengals for me. It's their offense being more vertical and set based, not maybe jet sweep heavy. I know they've tried to make Chase a handoff guy for years, and it's like never worked. It's
Never
like
goes well.
it
No.
never goes well, and they keep trying it. It's like I know it's the weirdest
It
thing.
should work.
He's so good with the ball in his hands. As soon
Yeah.
as you hand it off to him, it just goes away. It's just like he's like, I don't know. That's his type of role, like that. I think he would have to be at. The Bengals don't use their receivers in that type of way. They might want to mold. I just said all the stuff with Bowers and all the stuff he can unlock, but Corley to me is like a round 3 type that maybe there will be some more Rams influence, but they've kind of gotten away from all that Rams type of stuff. The jet sweep stuff and all that, with
Yep.
Burrow and everything, and what they're so static and everything. He needs to be in motion.
Yep. I just wanted to, before I move on, I wanted to point out something you guys talked about on the receiver podcast was, this Washington guys always just getting after people in the run game, like however they were blocking, like they're all very willing man, that
Yes.
is a Bengals staple, and that is something that they have preached here as a
That's
big
it.
way that they get the extra as they try to find explosion. Chase has been that way. I mean, Higgins, for all they are, and I'll talk about them as receivers, they've been that way since they've been here, and that is something that they do value. That will push a guy up, a
Yep.
half a round on their board if you have that. And that's why I even look at McMillan. Maybe he's more slot only, but he gives me big Tyler Boyd vibes and could
Yes.
absolutely be the type of guy who maybe it is round 3 but he is almost like a 1-for-1 Boyd replacement.
That's it.
At that level.
That's McMillan. Yeah, if you're going with the other Washington guy, you just nailed it on the head. I was trying to bridge the Higgins stuff, but if you're just going Boyd, he's perfect for it. And I've compared him to Christian Kirk. That's how I kind of picture McMillan, which is a good thing. I mean that complimentary, not derogatory. I mean that as a compliment. We're not talking about his contract. But it's but McMillan to me is slot only, but he does the dirty work way more than Kirk does. And he is a good God, he's just good, smooth. He's just a smooth athlete. He's really good on the intermediate stuff. I picture him all these outbreakers, and he's just such a smooth athlete. If you're just going straight Boyd replacement, love him. I like him better at Pearsall, especially the range that they're going in. I think there's similar types of players as far as like what they're going to be at the NFL level. I would take McMillan more or McMillan higher. And so I'm with you on that.
It's fascinating. I would love to talk about case studies. That'll be fun is going back and look at everybody's receiver rankings across all 32 teams between like 4 and 15 after this draft, because I guarantee the ranges are probably, insane. One thing that's not insane is everybody agrees about the top of this draft in terms of the offensive linemen, the tackles. We know the Bengals aren't shy about talking about what types of offensive tackles they like. They're massive. We know that now. We know what they're leaning into here. It's not a secret.
I approve.
With that, knowing that lean and that style that they feel, how would you rank the tackles for the Bengals at 18 from all of these top guys, and also throwing in Orlando Brown's been very vocal about I'm a left tackle. It was important to him. It's why he came here. I don't think they want to bring anybody in here and force Orlando to move. They're happy with him. So knowing that it's right side, knowing their size, how would you look at that group, that top, what is the top 6? Everybody keeps kind of 6 or 7 and people keep throwing
6, 7. Yeah. Oh man, I love this line class because Mike, you just said was like, oh, I'm just a left tackle. There's so many guys in this class that's like I could see them at a couple spots and usually in a good way, not like they have to play there. The guys at the top, Joe Alt, I'm sure they'll be gone before the Bengals pick. He seems like a lock to be in the top 10. A guy that was battling for him and still technically my tackle 1, I might swap him with Alt is Fashanu from Penn State. To me, he's a left tackle only. And I mean that in a good way. I think he can be that, but it's one of those I would draft him. Your left tackle. Okay, we're not moving you around. Maybe the Chargers, that's a whole different discussion. If we're talking about just we want this big boy that can play right tackle. That's JC Latham from Alabama, who I see as close to Alt and Fashanu than other people do. And I think he is growing a little bit. He looks like a guard. He's 350 pounds. He's built. I keep saying the term. He's built like a globe. He's built like our logo right here. Where you have the growler. Like he's built like that logo. But he moves really well. And I think I've seen some people go, oh, he has to play guard. I'm like, why? He's a good athlete and he's got good feet. He's got good hands. Like he's the best run blocker in this draft. He's so strong for what they've been leaning into tackle wise. That makes all the sense in the world. The problem is I think other coaches that like their beef might be taking him before the Bengals select. I think Callahan will like him. With both Callahans, the head coach and the offensive line coach for the Titans. I think they will like him. I think the Chargers love him. They've spent a lot of time over there. I can see Harbaugh really liking him. But if he falls, that's like done. Do it. If he does have to play guard rookie year, we can we'll find a spot for this dude because he's that worth that type. If you're talking home run swing and this guy might fall, it's Amarius Mims, who is right tackle right now at Georgia, but has the upside of being a true bona fide left tackle. Just one of the weirdest studies I've ever had. He's only played 8 games in college, but his tools he has the highest ceiling about anyone in this draft. And this is a draft of Marvin Harrison, Caleb Williams, Drake May, all these guys, all these receivers and stuff. Like he has that type of ceiling. It's just that it's a home run swing. But man, he'd be a fun one if they were trying to find some guy, not go on this merry-go-round and maybe find that bona fide blue chip guy. He's one. But the guy that I think is perfect for the Bengals because we need to fill these spots throughout the years. Do we need an interior guy? Do we need a right tackle next year? We're not sure. There's two really, but the one I'm thinking of is Troy Fatanu. I'm always messing up his name, from Washington, who I think can play all 5 spots. I'm a huge fan of him. I have him at number 10 on my big board. This is the type of range I think he'll go. Or Graham Barton from Duke, who I think can play right. I think he can stay at tackle, but I think he's really, really going to be end up at guard. But I do think he can play right tackle down the road. I think he's that athletic, has plenty of length. So those are the guys I've looked at. I know the last one was Talise Fuaga from Oregon State. He's a right tackle right now. I think he'll be best as a guard. Some of the tackle pass protection stuff has me a little iffy, but maybe the Bengals want these guys to be run first. So, maybe that's not the worst thing overall. I don't know. I'd rather have a guy pass protecting my franchise quarterback that has some injury history. I'd much rather have a guy protecting him first. We'll figure out the run game later. But why that took me so long to explain, there's a lot of guys. There's a lot of talent at the top of the draft, and especially where the Bengals are picking in the teens.
Best pass pro out of all of those, of the 4, I guess, take the kind of left tackle guys out of best pass pro of those 4 that you mentioned there at the end. Who do you think?
So, okay, like Barton, Fatnu.
I guess throw Barton in, Latham, Fuaga,
Fatnu. Yeah, the best pass I know. I always thought it was Fatanu, but it's Fatnu apparently. He's just a technician, and he had long. He's just 6'4" flat, just 6'4" flat. So I think that's thrown a lot of people off. He can stay at tackle, but he has over 34-inch arms. He's got great hands. He's got great feet. I mean, his combine showing was one of the better offensive line combine showings I've seen. I think he's a star. Okay, maybe he can't play left tackle. I still think he can. Okay, there's 4 other spots, even center. Mike Golick Jr. and I have talked about this, and I've mentioned this on our shows. He has an ass for a center. So it's like, whatever. But he fill out whatever spot we need him at, he's going to start there, and we're good. That's why I like him so much, because I think he could be a good player. So he's a great pass protector, pretty good run blocker, a technician. Yeah, I really like him, if you guys can't tell.
I will get you out of here with one last question. Okay. And it's the Byron Murphy conundrum in a league where these guys are getting paid more than ever. It is more valuable than ever. Everybody wants a game-wrecking 3-tech or defensive tackle, and they only come from one round for the most part. They almost never hit free agency. You are the Bengals. You have that. Yeah, sure. You have, everybody needs it, and they need it. They're looking for more disruption, always there. Where would you slot that with knowing everything about this league and where it's at of Murphy amongst that offensive line group you just talked about in terms of, value to the team, bringing you wins, war, I guess. Where does he slot? Where does he slot?
Oh man, it's hard. It's because for me, it's gone back to my thinking. It's always just the player. I just try not to look at the position label and just go 99 overall Madden. We're good. We'll figure it out and go from there. Offensive line, I'm always going to have a preference with. And I also think all the discussions you just said with defensive tackles, I think offensive line's the same way. Orlando Brown is an anomaly. And that's because he's just he's willing to stand on his business a lot more than other guys are. And so you don't usually see those guys hit the market. So this is where my team building thought process comes through anyways. I think Byron Murphy is a good prospect up to a very good prospect. I don't look at him as a blue chip. I look at him just below. Going into teens, I am fine with. I have 17 guys as blue chip guys. Just me, my perspective. Usually it's about 15 to 20 for guys. He's 19th on my board. So I'm not I'm not going like, oh, he sucks. He's still a top 20 player for me, but there is a tier difference, I think, from these offensive linemen I just talked about. I would say Fuaga and Murphy are in the same tier as me. Fuaga being from Oregon State. He's 18, they're 19. I would look at him about the same. So just what you said with defense tackles, I still would prefer line. Joe Burrow's still our guy. If we're moving on from Higgins, we still need needle movers on this offense to help us out, to keep the boat afloat, just keep it all going. Where they kind of have shifted the last few years too, offensively, I still would prefer, as far as kind of being, I don't say safer, but underneath, attacking, all the efficiency. Yeah, that leads me to go, let's make our offensive line badasses and go with that. And we can maybe go next year and find maybe a better prospect where we're picking, hopefully in the 20s or hopefully 32 or 31, somewhere right there. So that's just my team building. That's just my preference. And also just these players I think are a half tier better. And maybe just my fan fiction has gone this far that I'm like, yeah, this is this is it. This
Yeah.
is how that's how I'm going with it all the way.
It's amazing. I mean, because he's kind of a fascinating prospect in that there you hear, I mean, different sides of it. I mean, it's like, look, the numbers of just straight win rate. If he can do what he did at Texas last year, I mean, he's up there in production with all the names of the dudes that make more money than almost anybody else in football on defense. And but is he that? And where does that slide? And we've got such a good draft at the top. It's like it's kind of a fascinating conversation.
Lou Anarumo almost has made himself his own worst enemy. That are like, hey, he'll coach him up. Like whoever we give him a third rounder, he'll figure it out. Like that's almost my dad ran into the same issue sometimes. He's like, I can't get any day 1 or day 2 guys because they know that I'll coach up the 6th rounder. And so it's like he just keeps getting that. Lou Anarumo's kind of going through the same thing. I'll just say my thoughts real quick on Murphy is I do like him he's a gap shooter. I think he's pretty good against the run, but you're paying him to disrupt the play. He's an explosive player for the defense. Who they have right now, I like it for the Bengals. I like his fit more than maybe the Seahawks, who's been kind of linked with Murphy. I like his fit for them. So if you like, I'm not saying that, oh, this is a stupid, don't want to go there. I do understand his landing spot with the Bengals if they did that path because BJ Hill's moving on. He's way more disruptive than BJ Hill or in a year. Sean Rankins is a plugger. If you have a plugger, you need a guy that can disrupt. That's the classic 1-2. So I do like the fit if they did go down that path.
It's a good year to be 18, honestly, and have needs at offensive tackle and defensive line, and then have a stay 2 need at receiver. It's like it does. The path fits them, and they've taken that path through how they've acted in free agency because I feel like they're more. I say this, and it'll go the exact opposite, but they feel more predictable this year than they have almost ever because of where their needs are, because of what they did in free agency, because of where the draft is strong. And so I'm really curious to see how it falls out, and really appreciate your time, Nate. Of course, awesome stuff. Everybody, make sure you're listening to the NFL Football Podcast. It's just awesome. I mean, what Robert and Nate have done over there, and if you want to talk receivers, man, it's all there. It's all there for you. Every last guy trying to pull you back in, trying to rein it in, but not successfully always.
It's just 3 hour. We're just rolling and rolling. I could have got.
And you guys will be live in Detroit. You guys will be live in Detroit during the draft. So make sure y'all are taking that in, which is going to be fantastic stuff too. You can go over to the YouTube channel, and you of course can listen on the Athletics feed. You know where it's all at. All right, thanks everybody. Thanks Nate. Appreciate your time, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yep.